There are plenty of golden opportunities for players on this Nashville Predators roster, but those opportunities may come with added pressure. So, who on the team faces the most pressure this season? We're going to talk about that on today's Locked On Predators podcast.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast, and thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are your free daily Nashville Predators podcast. We're a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off this Monday episode with a shout out to our Locked On Pred heads. Those are our everyday listeners who tune in to talk Nashville Predators hockey with us. We appreciate your support, and we love that we get to spend a little bit of your day with you. I'm Ann Kimmel. I am a writer with Penalty Box Radio, and my friends, I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Emma Lingen, and I'm the Predators site editor and reporter for the Hockey News.
So David Bowie and Queen may have said it best when they sang, "Pressure pushing down on me, pressing down on you, no man ask for." As expectations for the Nashville Predators amp up with the moves Barry Trotz has made, the pressure on some of those players has amped up as well. Today, we're going to talk about the players who may carry a heavier burden this season because of those expectations. And we're going to talk about some players who may avoid that added pressure and exceed expectations. Before we dive into all that, though, want to let you know today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As playoffs wind down, the sports stop sportsing like we want them to, but this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, Emma, we are looking ahead at what is coming down the pipe in 2024-25. It's been really exciting this offseason. I'm not going to brag, but I'm pretty sure Nashville Predators fans are having the most fun this offseason of anybody. And you and I are probably having more fun than any of the other hosts as well.
We've certainly had a lot more to talk about, which has been
nice. We have. And that's going to continue into the season, I'm sure, as we get used to these new players on the roster. But we wanted to take a minute to talk about, with those increased expectations, I feel like there are some very specific players and people who are going to be facing added pressure next season. And there's a number of ways to look at this, and a number of players, I think, who may find themselves under the microscope a little bit more. Do you want to kick us off, Emma, with who is somebody that you think maybe is going to be facing added pressure next season for the Preds?
Yeah, I have a couple in mind. I think if we're going to start with the newer faces, I would have to go with, I'm going to say Steven Stamkos is going to be facing a lot of pressure, because he has been like, yes, he's certainly not the only new signing from this offseason, but he is definitely the one that has been, garnered the most attention and, the most fanfare around it. And it's, and when I say that he has pressure, I don't mean that like, oh, is he going to live up to it? Because, 16 years of his career has shown that he probably will. But right. I think that he is definitely, the more attention that's on you, the more pressure you face as a result. So I think that, he is an interesting one to keep an eye on, just because, yes, like very successful career, but he's only ever played for one team before.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see. And, I'm not quite, I know I was said last time, I am a pessimist, but I'm not quite so pessimistic to think, oh, he's only the player he is because of Kucherov and whoever else on Tampa. I don't think that's true, but I think that he's definitely, like, a lot of eyes are going to be on him.
Yeah. And you look at his stats, and I think everybody in Nashville, the expectation is he's going to replicate these stats from the get-go. And you have to remember, he has never been in this situation. He has never been in this situation in all of those years in the NHL, like new city, new team, and even, things outside of hockey. His kids are in a new school and, new neighborhood. He's trying to find the ketchup at Walmart, all of that kind of stuff. And I think there is pressure because the expectation is he is going to perform like he has. And I'm with you. I really do feel like that's going to happen. I think people are going to need to be very patient with Steven Stamkos. And that's the part that I'm not sure that the NHL fandom in general is going to give the grace that I think he has earned for the transition that he's going through. And I'm with you. Don't come at me and tell me it's because he's not that great without Kucherov and without Braden Point and without all these other players. I don't believe that that's it at all. I think he has to get used to his new Kucherov, his new Braden Point, and that's going to take some time. But there is pressure. You would think, though, like, here's me. If I'm Steven Stamkos, you would think he probably operates under that because he is the captain. He is one of those players in the league that, all eyes are on him. Regardless of what team you follow, everybody knows Steven Stamkos. But yeah, I think out of the gate, high expectations.
Definitely. Like you said, he's been a face of the franchise. He's been a face of the NHL. Like people just know who he is. And so if there was anyone who could handle this pressure, I think it would be him. But he'll have his work cut out for him.
Yeah. Here's a player that I am thinking is going to face a lot of pressure, but also I want to preface this by saying I don't think we're going to see it on him at all. And my friends, that is Tommy Novak.
Oh no, you're never going to see it.
You're never going to see Tommy Novak literally is the most chill person. We've heard John Hines say, we've heard Andrew Brunette say, don't get high, don't get too low. I would like to introduce you to Tommy Novak.
He is as even keel as they come.
He is vanilla ice cream all the time. Like he is as even keeled. But I think this season, the pressure is on Tommy Novak. Last season, 71 games played, 18 goals, 45 points. The season 22-23, where he kind of stepped up when we were going through their dropping like flies season, he had 17 goals. Here's a couple of reasons why I think he is really going to be under pressure. Number one, he struggled in the postseason. And when that is the kind of last thing that people see from you, the pressure is on to prove who you are and what you can handle. And I don't think it's about his playmaking in the postseason. I think it's about being able to compete against a team with the physicality that we saw against Vancouver. I also think his new contract, 3 years, $10.5 million. I think there's a little bit of a prove you're worth it for a lot of people. And then the opportunity in front of him. I think this is an opportunity where potentially Tommy Novak may be the first sort of choice if they decide to keep Stamkos and Marchessault on the wings. It could be Tommy Novak's line to center. That's next level. And how is he going to do with that? And look, here's what we know about Tommy Novak. It can be very successful as a center. He can be very successful on the line. He was great with Evangelista. He was really great with Jankowski. But he has to prove that he's that elite playmaker if you're going to play with Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault or on that second line. And so I just feel like there's a lot of pressure that timing-wise is coming right at Tommy Novak, who, by the way, is going to handle it like vanilla ice cream.
You would never know.
You'll never know.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. It is unfortunate that, a lot of people have that recency bias about him with his performance in the playoffs. And again, I'm not going to sit here and argue that he had a good playoffs because he did not. And I don't think he would argue that he did either. So, but it's, really, if you think about it, no one on the Predators had a good playoffs.
Yeah.
But it was more evident with him, I think just because of his size or lack thereof, and he kind of got ragdolled out there. And, I think people see that's their last memory of him.
Right.
And then they hear that guy is supposed to be our second line center. No way. And it's like, well, yeah, that's a fair point. But again, like people forget everything else that he's done, and he's so quick. He's great with his hands. Like, he's a really, really skilled playmaker, who I think because of that kind of even keel, he handles whatever pressure is put on him. But I do agree, because I know there are a lot of people who are not sold on him as a second line center, and now and before that was okay, because it was like, well, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But now he has that contract. And again, it's not like he's making $8 million.
Robbing the bank, right?
No, but still, I think some people even saw that as too much for Tommy Novak, for someone who is relatively unproven at the NHL level, which he still is. So I think that I agree with you. It's pressure to go out and say, hey, I earned this contract. Here's why.
Yeah. And this, I think, is the biggest opportunity that Tommy Novak has had so far in his career. Is he ready for it? Is he ready to step into playing on a line with that kind of talent and being able to be that playmaker? So big opportunity for him. But I love you say recency bias. I think there are a lot of people after the postseason are like, he's not ready. I would say go back and watch some Nashville Predators highlights goals, because you are going to see Tommy Novak. He's got some elite skills. So let's see what he can do with it. And again, I would say so unflappable. I don't know that he feels the pressure, but I know that we will not see it if he does. It's a phenomenon.
He just doesn't emote like in any way. He doesn't. Like him, you could tell him the funniest joke he's ever heard in his life, and he'd probably just be like, huh. And that's him cracking up. And I just think that's how he is. That's why we love him.
The most emotion I have ever really seen from Tommy Novak was when he talked about the ice cream being removed from road trips. No, and that is no exaggeration. That was by far the most the strongest feeling I felt like he expressed. And you know what? Zero judgment, Tommy Novak. I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Coming up, we're going to talk about a few more people who may have some extra pressure this season. And we're also going to tell you a couple of players who may just be able to YOLO their way through 2024-25. Today's episode is brought to you by our great friends at Indeed. We are all driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. So join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on the podcast. Once again, that's Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. All right, Emma, there is another player, since we were talking about contracts, and I think contracts bring pressure. And I'm going to say there's maybe a little bit of pressure on Juuse Saros this season. Of course, 8-year contract, just under 62 million total, 7.74 AAV, which, by the way, I love that for number 74. I am here for the magic numbers, y'all. I think the contract definitely puts some pressure on Juuse Saros to prove that he is a goaltender that can take a team all the way. I also think the statistics from last season put a little bit of pressure on Juuse Saros going into 24-25.
Yeah, and I think he was on my list as well. And it's funny because technically that contract doesn't even kick in until next season. He's still making $5 million right now.
He's still a bargain, y'all.
Yeah, we're still getting him at a bargain price, but yeah, I think he is absolutely like gonna face some pressure, added pressure for all the reasons you just said. You know, some people didn't like the term on that contract, which again, I have made my arguments as to why, you know, you weren't getting them without that term. So deal with it. But I think that, you know, there's that. And then there's the, you know, his statistically his worst season last year, which again, worst season, he still finished 5th in the Vezina voting. Like if that's your worst, then
I think Juuse Saros should sleep fine at night.
I'll take that any day of the week.
Yeah.
I think also you add on the fact now that and let me just preface this by saying this is absolutely flawed logic, but it is still logic that I hear people using quite a bit, which is that, you know, when it came to whether, you know, re-sign him or trade him, what are you going to do? And people who were against re-signing him would try to argue that, well, he's never won a playoff series. Now,
can we talk about that?
While that is technically true, he alone did not win or lose that team a playoff series.
Correct.
Plus, one of them, he was injured, so he didn't even play. But now I'm not saying the Preds would have beaten Colorado that year because they wouldn't.
They were, Colorado was Colorado that year.
Yes, but I think that the point is, you know, people try to pin that too much on him. And it's like, well, he's not worth this much money or this much term because he's never won a playoff series. Okay. If we're being honest, the team that he was backstopping up until this year never had expectations that were that high on them as far as like, yeah, okay, maybe make the playoffs and, you know, see what happens. But they never went into a season as like, oh, keep an eye out for these guys. Like these are, you know, these are going to be some of your biggest competition. So that's why I think it's unfair to really put that on him as being like, well, he's never won a playoff series. No, the whole team has not won a playoff series with him as the goalie. And so now, obviously, I don't think anyone will tell you that the Predators are entering this season as the cup favorite because they're not. There are quite a few teams ahead of them in that race, but their expectations are significantly higher than they would have been, you know, than they were at this point last year or at this point 2 months ago, frankly. So I think that with that in mind, he now, you know, the whole team has these raised expectations, but he is a big part of that because it's like, in addition to, well, we just paid you this big fat contract and we want you like, and oh, by the way, we're trying to go win a Stanley Cup now.
Yes.
So we're going to need you to help us do that. And so, and we've said it, a lot of people have said it, that he's the kind of goalie that, I mean, you don't want this to be the circumstance that you're in, but if push came to shove, he is the kind of goalie who could steal you a series in the playoffs.
Agreed.
And I think because he hasn't done that, people are like, oh, he's never won a playoff series. It's like, no, because he was never given a chance. Like he never had a fighting chance. And so now, theoretically, this team has a fighting chance. And so I think a lot of people are going to be looking at him now.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head when you talk about that postseason argument. You know, my husband is an analyst, and he always says statistics tell you the truth except when they're lying. And that's what it is when you look at his postseason numbers. You know, those statistics tell you one thing, but when you look at the big picture, they're also lying a little bit about Juuse Saros and his talent. The other thing that I think adds a little bit of pressure for Saros is people view this 8-year contract as either delaying Yaroslav Askarov, who I think there are still people who believe that he's NHL ready. He is not. He's so talented and he's so close, but he's not there yet. Or that he is going to cost the team Yaroslav Askarov. And so to make it worth it, to risk losing Askarov or delaying Askarov, Juuse Saros has to hit it out of the park this season. And again, those are two things that may not be related necessarily. But I do think that adds some pressure. I agree with what you're saying. I think the pressure for Juuse Saros is going to kick in the postseason. That's when I really think it's going to amp up. Nashville hopefully is going to kind of change up his workload with Scott Wedgwood in the fold now. So I think maybe the regular season, not as much pressure, but I do think the postseason is going to be, kind of a prove it time for sweet Juuse Saros.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll see what he can do. Who else is on your list of like, hey, got a little added pressure on you? What you gonna do with that?
I'm going to go back to the new guys, and I'm going to say specifically out of that group, I'm going to go with Brady Shay.
Love
and
that.
I think a big part of that, on top of being new and being like, all right, let's see what you got, he is maybe, he's not coming in with Steven Stamkos like expectations because he's not Steven Stamkos, but I think he was one that a lot of people were kind of maybe taken aback by the term of that contract or the amount of the contract. I think, Stamkos, one of the best players in the league, and you only get him for 4 years. Okay, maybe you overpay for 4 years. Fine. Marchessault, a little bit less, you're not paying him as much, and it's 5 years. Fine. Shay, 7 years.
7.
Yeah, 7 years, 49 million. I think, and that's his big payday of his career, right? That's the biggest contract he's ever had. And I think that, he was maybe one that was not necessarily on Predators fans' radar. They wanted like I don't know, like a lot of people wanted Nikita Zadorov after that.
Right.
After that video. Yeah.
Recency bias again.
Yes.
But yeah,
yes.
people did. Yeah.
But I think that, and maybe some people are saying like, well, I don't think that Brady Shay is worth 7 times 7. It's like, well, there could be some truth to that, to play devil's advocate. However, if you look at the market, Nikita Zadorov as an example, defensemen are getting overpaid. Like you
Right.
have to overpay to get the good defensemen because there are so few of them. And so I think that, and people are getting really hung up on the contract term, I think, for him. And being like, well, in 7 years, he's going to be 37 years old and he's not going to be No, but the thing is, when you sign these lengthy contracts, you're signing them to that term because you want them right now. You want them for what they're going to do for you for the next like 3 to 4 years.
Right.
And in order to get them during that time, you have to promise them more time.
A couple more. Right.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And that, like, is that ideal? No, but it's how the business works and it's how you play the game. And so I think that he's one that, I think we get spoiled here in Nashville, and people think that if you're going to be a good defenseman, if you're worthy of, making that kind of money as a defenseman, you better go out and score goals like Roman Josi. And it's like, no.
That's not normal.
No, that is not normal, and we are quite spoiled because we have that. And I think that, Ryan McDonough came in and people didn't really have issues with that contract as much because there was less time remaining on it, but also, he's just kind of one of those larger than life kind of figures. I think that people saw him as like, oh my God, he's a Stanley Cup champion, back to back. He's a hero in Tampa. They love him, blah, blah, blah. I think because Brady Shay doesn't have those Stanley Cups, he doesn't have that like franchise legend status. He's never been a captain, all those things that McDonough has, people are like, really? I don't know. But I think that Brady Skjei, I had the pleasure of watching Brady Skjei for 2 seasons when I was in Carolina before I came to Nashville. And I'm telling you, he is going to do so much for this team. I really think he is. And I think that he is actually going to provide a lot on the back end because, you talk about wanting to get bigger, Brady Skjei. You want to get faster, Brady Skjei. You want to have the occasional, clutch goal when you need it, whether it be on the power play, on the penalty kill at 5-on-5, Brady Skjei. Like, he's not going to be Roman Josi. Like, I need Predators fans to understand that it's not normal for a defenseman to regularly lead the team in scoring.
I know he's such an anomaly, but I agree with you. When we're so used to seeing a defenseman do what Roman Josi does, it's a little disappointing when the other guys show up and don't.
So, yes, and so when you think it's like, "Oh, but can he find the back of the net?" It's like, well, maybe not, but technically he shouldn't have to because the forwards should be doing that. But, I mean, yes, obviously you want a well-rounded game, I understand that, but I think because Brady Skjei is one of the, I don't want to say he came out of nowhere because obviously he and Brett Pesce, his defensive partner in Carolina, were 2 of the big names that were out there. And I think a lot of people in Nashville kind of had their sights set on Pesce. Again, his offensive numbers are a little bit better. But you know what? Barry Trotz went out and got the offense in Stamkos and Marchessault. Shay, yes, sure, he provides a little bit more offense than McDonough, but that's not his primary goal or his primary responsibility to provide offense. I mean, the more he can do, great, but that's not what you need him for. He is incredibly sound defensively. He is excellent on the penalty kill, and I think he's going to be a really good addition to this team. But don't take my word for it. If you want to put the pressure on him, I completely understand it.
Yeah. It's going to be a little bit of a prove it thing, I think, for Brady Skjei more than maybe Stamkos or Marchessault for a lot of Nashville Predators fans. So there is a little bit more pressure on that. I agree with you, though. I think sit back and watch. And I think Brady Skjei is going to surprise some people.
Yes.
Coming up, we're going to talk about one other person I think who may have a little bit of pressure. And we're also going to talk about maybe a couple of Nashville Predators players who don't have much pressure and who may flourish in that situation. Want to let you know today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Look, we all love the sports. We love them so much. We never want them to stop. We want to be watching it all day, all night. But as you know, NHL's wound down. We're getting fewer and fewer games, fewer and fewer sports. The sports, they are not sportsing like we want them to. But FanDuel lets you keep the sports going whenever you want. All you have to do is open their app and dream up bets anytime you're in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there is something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head on over to fanduel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, Emma, I wanted to mention somebody else who's maybe not on the ice, but who may be behind the bench, who could perhaps have a little bit of pressure on. And I'm wondering if there's maybe a little more pressure this season on Andrew Brunette, which sounds weird because look, he finished second in the Jack Adams. You want to talk about a really great season, inaugural season with the Nashville Predators. He definitely was successful. He brought Nashville into kind of a more competitive contemporary style of play, made some big adjustments. Here's where I wonder if there's pressure. Last season, Andrew Brunette brought in these older veterans in Ryan O'Reilly and in Gus Nyquist and in Luke Schenn, but specifically looking at Ryan O'Reilly and Gus Nyquist. And he brought them in and led them. He helped them have these big seasons. I mean, it was a career season for Gus Nyquist. It was one of the best seasons for Ryan O'Reilly. I mean, it was his best season since I think 2018, 2019. And I wonder if there is pressure for Andrew Brunette to be able to replicate that level of success with veterans like Stamkos and Marchessault, and maybe even a little bit Brady Shay. Like, expectations for the roster are high, but can Andrew Brunette bring out of these veterans what we saw from Ryan O'Reilly and Gus Nyquist? I wonder if there's a little pressure.
I think, much like Tommy Novak, Andrew Brunette's a guy that if he's feeling the pressure, you would never know it.
No.
However, I think there's some truth to that, what you're saying. I also kind of, in the broader perspective, I would think that there might be some pressure on him for his sort of roster management. Because last season, he relied a lot on that top line, that top forward line of those veterans, which at times, even I was saying, I'm like, I can see what he's trying to do here, but I just don't know if he's got the horses for the race that he wants to run, because it just seems like he's relying way too much on 3 guys plus Roman Josi, 4 guys. And so now that you have, and you know, in his defense, it's like, well, there really wasn't that much offensive depth.
What else do you do?
Exactly. And it's like, you know, I think that now, in theory, he has a much deeper roster offensively with these new additions. So now it's like, okay, is he going to keep throwing that top line back out there all the time? Are they going to have to eat up that many minutes? Because again, these guys are getting older. Like, you don't necessarily want 34-year-old Gus Nyquist out there like leading the team in ice time. Like, I just think that it's, you know, it'll be interesting to see at 5-on-5 how he manages, but also I think another area where he will face pressure is on the power play, because that was his thing. That's like his bread and butter. He absolutely, you know, Florida had a dominant power play when he was there. He went to New Jersey, completely transformed their power play. Comes to Nashville, and we're all thinking like, oh, here we go. And power play finish. Yeah, big womp. Finish 16th in the league, literally right in the middle. And I think we were all just kind of like, really? That's it? This was supposed to be your thing. What are you doing? And then, you know, something that I think maybe we hadn't really thought about until Barry Trotz mentioned it at his end of season availability, which was, you know, a priority for the team moving forward, was for guys to have specialized roles on special teams. Like, we don't want any more guys playing like both the power play and the penalty kill. I mean, in a pinch, yes. If your top penalty killer is in the penalty box, then yes, that changes things. But I think in general, it's like we want guys to specialize. And so I think that's where, again, bringing in a guy like Brady Shay is going to be helpful. Bringing in a guy like Steven Stamkos is going to be very helpful. I think that, you know, that's something that for me personally, if I'm going to be putting any extra eyes on Andrew Brunette, it's to see how the power play does.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting because you've got the pieces on, you know, you look at this roster now and you've got some amazing power play pieces. What is Andrew Brunette going to be able to do with the combinations that he can throw out there? I think that's a great question, and something that Predators fans want an improvement on right away out of the gate for the Predators. When you look at the roster, is there anybody that you look at and you're like, they're flying under the radar, no pressure, but they could really wow this season?
I don't know. I feel like, I don't know. I'm gonna go with Spencer Stastny. I think because he is, you know, he's not a rookie, but he just signed his, you know, contract, and if he does make the roster out of training camp, which we think he will. It'll be his first season as a full-time NHLer. So I think people aren't really going to, for that reason alone, necessarily expect the world of him. But I think that he could definitely wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm very excited to see him. And I agree with you. He, of course, is known for great skating. He's a very solid defenseman and all of that. But I think because it's his first full season, he may knock some socks off. Here's one who, this is so not his first full season, but who I think like is flying under the radar and could secretly like knock people's socks off. And that is Colton, Mr. Potato Head Sissons.
Oh yeah.
Because this is a guy who, look, everybody has said it. He's not a second line center, but you know what? He may jump up into that role. And if you need somebody in a pinch to play with perhaps a Steven Stamkos, perhaps a Jonathan Marchessault, Colton Sissons could do that probably blindfolded because he's just so reliable.
Yeah.
He is so flexible as far as what role he can play, what they need from him. And so I just wonder, like, is there going to be a bigger role if, maybe things don't work out with Tommy Novak? Is there maybe a bigger role for Colton Sissons that he may step into and surprise some people?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think he is easily one of the, if not the most underrated two-way centers in the game right now. I think, and I keep going back to this. I asked Jason Zucker about this when he arrived in Nashville and he was playing on a line with Colton Sissons. And I don't remember exactly what I said, but I think in the question I said something about him being, Sissons maybe being underrated, so how do you feel playing with him? And he goes, well, he's underrated in the media, but everybody knows who he is. Like everybody knows who that guy is. You go out and you're like, oh, I got to play against 10. I don't want to be up against that guy. Like he is, for whatever reason. I mean, I guess because obviously he's not like the most flashy offensive guy and he's not a super high skill guy, that he doesn't necessarily get the respect he deserves. But I think that, for that reason, he flies so far under the radar, but definitely has the ability to come out and wow people.
Yeah. So who do you all think is under pressure coming up in the 2024-25 season? We would love to know. Let us know. You can tweet us at LO_Predators. You can leave a reply under our YouTube video. If you want to chat more about that, you can join our insider program. That is via subtext. Information to become a Locked On Predators insider is in the description of this video. Also in our bio, we'd love to have you join us. Just a chance to chat. Predators with Emma and I post podcast as well. So check out information on that. Before we sign off today, though, Emma, let everyone know, where can they find you and your work?
You can find me on social media at Emma_Lingen, and you can find my work at the Hockey News.
And you can find me on social media at AnnK_Mama on Ice. You can find my work at Penalty Box Radio as well. That's going to do it for this Monday episode of the Locked On Predators podcast. Remember, we are in our off season. We're going to have 3 episodes per week. We'll be back on Wednesday. We have some great content coming for you, including a really great interview that we're hoping to get out later this week as well. So be sure to check back in with us. Hope you all have a great Monday. We'll see you soon.